regular meeting of November the 4th, 2022. And we welcome all of you. And we're going to get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. And the Pledge of Allegiance is done by Rail, first grader at 2nd Street School. I think it's Rail. I hope so. I apologize if I mispronounced your name. But would everybody please stand? And because it is hard to hear the pledge by the people that are doing it on tape, we just ask that you listen and let them lead us in the pledge, okay? Everybody please stand, and Andrew, let's begin with the pledge.
Hi, my name is Rayo, and I go to 2nd Street School, and I'm in first grade. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, for liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Rayo. Thanks, everybody.
I like how she had moral support that
Kind of like us.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I was waiting for her to come in.
Yeah, there's the support there. There you go. Well, as the next item on the agenda is a very exciting item, and we're very fortunate today to have Mark Wright here to help us introduce his son, who is going to be singing this afternoon or this evening, and a local person that is here as to introduce a country music star in the making. And this is very exciting. So, Mark, if you would come up, I've got this for you, and I want to talk about tonight, and most importantly, talk about your son. Okay?
Thank you.
And welcome. How many of you have heard of Gibson Wright? Okay. What have you heard, Charlie? Because you're a country music aficionado.
I've actually heard a little bit of it. Of course, Mark's done some work with him, so I've kept up a little bit.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm going to do this proclamation, then I'm going to ask you, Mark, to kind of tell us a little bit about your son and especially what's happening tonight, because I think with this great weather tonight and the possibility of hearing a future star in country music, we're so excited, okay? And a local guy as well. Whereas Gibson Wright was born October 6, 1994 as Dylan T. Marcus Wright here in Frankfort, Kentucky. And whereas he attended Hearn Elementary, Elkhorn Middle School, and Franklin County High School. You like that, Scotty, I know that. And whereas Gibson was offered several collegiate scholarships from multiple universities, he chose to take the Vocal Performance Scholarship from Western Kentucky University. Sherry, I know you like that.
I love that.
Whereas he was a 2-year National Collegiate Male Vocalist of the Year who graduated with honors. Gibson continued his education through master's program at the University of Kentucky. So you like that one? And whereas he has performed in Spain, Canada, Mexico, and all over the United States. And whereas Gibson has been working on his first album in Nashville, Tennessee since 2020. And whereas he has arranged 11 single releases, wow, with the first release coming to radio this fall. And whereas Gibson has returned here to Frankfort, the place it all began, to launch his career as a country music artist. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Wilkerson and myself, Houston Wells County Judge, do hereby declare the 4th day of November 22, Frankfort and Franklin County Gibson Wright Day. How about that? Thank you. Well, wow to you. Congratulations.
I'd like for you to have this.
Okay.
As I thank all of you. You're a product of my son. We're going to put on a show for you this evening. One of the things that he wanted to do, Gibson asked me, Dad, can you do this for me? I want to give back to the people that helped me get here. So his first actual show is going to be tonight in front of the old Capitol at 7 o'clock. We brought in the bells and whistles. Okay, we're going to do you a really good show. You're going to get a look at his first album. We're going to go through the whole album and just let you hear him, let you understand who he is, and how grateful and how thankful he is for all the things that you do for us. His father and his mother obviously have had businesses here all of our lives, and we've been very blessed with Frankfort and Franklin County, and we just want to say thank you by giving this concert. Be there, be there, be there.
Okay.
He is,
Be there, be square.
I'm a proud father.
Absolutely.
But I'm also a country music musician myself.
There you go.
And he has excelled his father. Okay, so you're not going to be disappointed. But I wanted to say thank you to everybody here, and from a very grateful father. Thank you, sir.
From
Come join
from our community.
Thank you very much.
That guy right there, I know he'll have a special seat right there, Serafini's, and more than likely he'll be singing, but fortunately you won't be able to hear it.
Thank you so much.
All right, God bless, and we
Thank
look
you,
forward to
sir.
tonight. Thank you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Tonight, 7 o'clock, down on Broadway, a concert of, unlike we've had in a long time, a local guy making it big. Come and see it. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Give some
You see that on Comstar in about 2 weeks.
Well, I didn't take it closer one time, so there's
One time?
only a very, very, very few items that we'll have for, I should have told you this earlier. We'll
Well,
have
go ahead and say it out loud, because people, Wanna hear it.
shirts, and what we have for merchandise to be sold this evening is only gonna be done one time. We have a limited amount because we wanted to give something, obviously something special to you guys. So if this continues to grow, those might be worth something.
well, they will be worth something.
Thank you.
I'm very proud of our local guys. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right, the next item on the agenda is residential recovery, continued discussion. Robert Hewitt, are you on? You see Robert?
He's not there.
We need Robert.
He's here.
Okay.
Do you want him in the room? or-
Yes, let's have him come in the room, please. Robert, could you come in the room? Could you come
Yes,
in the
sir,
room?
right there.
Thank you. I think Mr. Harp is here as well. Mr. Harp, good to see you. You'll be part of, I'm sure, part of the discussion. As you can see on the agenda, there is an item that, based on the request of the board, that we change an RB zoning as part of this. And Robert will, I was unaware that we had to go back to the planning and zoning, but as part of the due process, we have to go back to planning and zoning as part of it, and so that is an item on our agenda that we will be discussing to take, to cover what was asked to do. So with that being the case, do you want to start the discussion? Anybody have any more or anything to bring up to discuss or continue discussing what we talked about from our last meeting? Squire Tracy.
Judge, did we ever come to, I guess, to an agreement or not, if we wanted to cap at the beginning, put a cap, and then if and then that is reached, revisit?
We can.
Did we ever?
We never
figure-
came, we talked about it, but it was never, there was never a final
Okay.
determination of how many or whatever.
Or you mean the recovery centers?
And I think one of the discussion is Mr. Sparks, are you on? I think we were discussing, can we do that? Whether that was legal or not. Mr. Sparks, can you, Robert, if you'll come up to the podium.
Good morning, Court.
Good morning. The concept of limiting the number of treatment facilities, the last discussion we had, was it legal? Can the court do that? And that was kind of how we left it.
I honestly am not aware of any way that the court could limit it unless you all can come up with some rationale, much like you would a hospital or a clinic or things like that, that would limit the number of facilities. I'm just not sure that the court has the rationale to limit the number of opportunities for people to get treatment in Frankfurt, and that's what you're talking about. You've got to have a articulable, reasonable basis to tell people they can't, or there shouldn't be. And I'm just not aware that the court's, number one, presented sufficient facts to justify that idea, and nor do I know what those facts would be to limit the number of facilities. There was a discussion relative to other things that the court has been able to limit, but those are based on other controlled substance outlets, not substance abuse treatment facilities. So I'm not aware that there's been an express rationale to do that, to be able to identify whether that rationale would be appropriate.
Okay.
And again, I'm not trying to limit. I guess my question is can we put a number on it to maybe come back and have a conversation down the road once, let's say it hits 10, and we find out that it's not really working in a zone? Can that be looked at?
That changed the gears just a little bit.
Sorry.
Well, I mean, I understand that. You're talking about within a zoning area, how many facilities, programs, et cetera. Because this is going back to planning and zoning for consideration, and then they bring it back to the court next year, presumably, I think you can ask that question as well, whether or not those zones could be limited in terms of number. You've got it in a lot of different locations where people could put a facility. But by the same token, if you've got a housing facility, you don't put the number of houses per se, you look at the area that you're proposing to put the houses on, not the number of houses that is put on there. So it gets a little more complicated, but I think you should ask planning and zoning as part of their consideration to evaluate that and see if there is a rationale or an approval that they can present.
Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't clear enough on that. Thank you.
Squire Moore?
Nice. Thank you as well.
Thanks.
Yeah, I understand that the Deatons are housing people out on Harvey Land Road, and I think they received a cease and desist letter, but they're still doing it. And they sent a letter, the lawyer sent a letter to Robert. I just want to know if those people are supervised while they're there, and is that legal to be housing in there when it's not a licensed facility?
Robert and I had this discussion the other day. Robert, you want to speak to that?
Yes, sir. So the Deaton's council and I exchanged letters after I issued the cease and desist order. And Mr. Harp replied that the premises on Harvey Land is not a treatment facility. It's no different than 4 people unrelated living together. So it's just a residential use. So there's no treatment. There's nothing going on there other than, I don't know, 4 people living there. I don't know how many's living there, but.
Okay. And they are not being treated there, in other words, they are.
Correct.
They are going to another facility to be treated. Is that the
Right.
way I
Are
understand it
they
with you?
supervised?
My understanding is no
Is there any-
supervision, no.
I mean, they're the only ones that know who these people are, know anything about it, or who they are, or anything. So, are they paying rent? It doesn't make sense to me.
Okay.
Go ahead, Scott.
Well, I think there's probably some issues that that you and Robert may need to talk about, Lambert, and we'll, Robert, if you would, get a hold of Lambert and talk with him about, as you've gone through this, what caused you to make your decisions one way or the other, okay?
Yes, sir.
All right, Squire Tracy?
Robert, just circling back to what Squire Moore asked or said, has there been an application turned in for the premises where these individuals are living?
No,
So there's nothing connected, it's
Correct.
Okay.
And since we do not do rental inspections, there's no reason for my inspectors to go to the property.
Okay. All right, Robert, kind of help lead us in the discussion of where we are in your discussion with Mr. Harp and answer questions that the court may have pertaining to these facilities, all right?
Yes, sir. So I was tasked with 3 items in preparation for today's meeting. First one was the removal of this as a condition, this recovery facility as a conditional use in the RB zone. So in your packet, I included a copy of the land use table in a spreadsheet form that basically, I took the C out. So with that being blank, that means it's not allowed in that zoning district. All right?
But this has to go back to the planning commission.
Yes, it'll go to the planning commission, and at that time, I'll have a strike through in that C showing its removal, and it'll appear that way on your ordinance as a strike through. Otherwise, all the other zones remained as they were originally adopted. The second task was to revise the definition. So also in your packet, under code 155.010, at the bottom, under residential recovery facility, I further defined more or less what it is not. And I think that was a concern of members of the court that, hey, could it be this, could it be that? So I went through the National Standard Industrial Classification System. So I identified correctional facilities, mental health facilities and things that, also other facilities identified in KRS to ensure that there's not a confusion in the future or future administration or future court, and that the use is only specific to a residential drug treatment facility. Because in my research, I found out that there are private companies that the Department of Correction hires to house inmates. So I wanted, that was a shock to me. So I made sure I put that in there as well. And so I hope that I achieved the task on that revised definition. So, and I think it's great that we've got this in here. I mean, I support this definition amendment. It's helpful to, the administration. I think it'll help, for years to come to say, this is not what this is. You can't blend it, all right? So, and then the third task was provide a list of the regulatory agencies. And so I've done that in terms of what agencies are involved in this type of facility. So I not only listed the entities, but also the tasks that they would perform as it relates to this amendment. So under the Franklin County Planning and Building Codes Department, we would process a conditional use permit application. If approved, we would process the business license. We would perform any electrical inspections. We would inspect the facility at time of occupancy. We would also review floodplain and stormwater management and inspections. We would also conduct building inspections and issue a certificate of occupancy. And in that bullet, it says 15 persons or less. When I did some research in the Kentucky Residential Code, that number actually drops down to 5 persons, and that's in Code Section 310.5.1, care facilities within a dwelling is the title of that. So under our local jurisdiction, it would not be 15, it would need to go down to 5.
So above 5, would that be the State Department of Housing?
Yes, that's correct.
So change 15 to 5?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Next would be the Franklin County Fire Department. As required in your currently adopted ordinance, they would prepare a pre-plan, which would require an inspection of the facility, and that would be kept on file at the Franklin County Fire Department. Franklin County Sheriff's Office would assist with any conflict management at the facility. Franklin County Health Department would assess the new or an existing wastewater system based on the change of use and the proposed occupant load. All right, that would be standard. We do that as part of the conditional use permit process as well. City of Frankfort Sewer Department, since the city does provide sewer service out into the county, if a facility is located on their system, we would notify them, request their comment as to the sewer capacity in that area and could they serve the proposed use based on the number of occupants. And then lastly was the Kentucky Department of Housing, Building and Construction. They would also do building inspections and issue certificates of occupancy and amended to 6 persons or more. That department would also do the sprinkler inspection based on if it's more than, I believe, 16 persons, then it has to be sprinkled. So that's all the agencies that would be involved based on my research.
Square Muller?
Judge Robert, thank you for working on this. I know this is an important thing here in Franklin County. Question, and I believe Squire Sebastian has brought this up as far as water pressure and stuff. I don't see any, they're not on the list. You know, I think some of the concerns, and Squire Moore too, was, you know, what if a facility goes in and then down the road the people suffer because there's not enough water pressure? Is that something that could be maybe added to this list?
Yes, sir. I'm noting that right now, and I apologize for that oversight. So that would include all rural water districts in the county, as well as the Frankfort Plant Board. So I will add that, and that will be amended into what I present to the Planning Commission and subsequently back to the court.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Once again, it goes back to an ability to serve. If the district's unable to serve them, then, you know, then that's a major criteria in the conditional use permit review.
That would ultimately be covered via the fire chief too, because if you couldn't get fire protection, if there wasn't enough water for fire protection, you obviously wouldn't have enough water for residential use. Is that correct?
Well,
Would that not be the,
you know, the fire department has other means. They have tanker trucks. They also can draft out of a pond, things of that nature. So they have other means in which either there's not enough pressure or flow or none or no water at all. So, but that mostly goes back to the requirement on the sprinkler system. If the state requires a sprinkler system based on the occupant load and the water district or water supplier can't provide it, then the state will not approve it at their level.
yeah, well,
So-
yes, that's what I believe.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's why the number of 5 or less or 6 or more becomes important.
Any other questions, Squire Sebastian?
I do. In this document that was provided to the court, it says more than half of the available living quarters, and then in parentheses it says e.g. beds. So what if a facility started out with 16 beds, 20 beds, let's make a number up, 20 beds, and then decided to add more beds? So then the facility goes up to 24 beds, I'm making up a number. And then it says, where it says more than half of the available living quarters, so it defines that specifically as beds, not rooms, or, I'm just trying to understand the difference here, because when I think of a living quarter, just in general, I think of a bedroom.
Yes.
But I know there are dorm type facilities that, so maybe you can just help educate the court about it.
Sure, so it would be based on beds, which once again goes back to the occupant load, which goes back to which department has co-jurisdiction. When processing a conditional use permit, staff will put the number of beds proposed and present that to the Board of Zoning Adjustments. Any change to that number of beds requires the reconsideration of that conditional use permit. So if they went from 15 to 24, they would have to go back to the board.
So that has to come back.
Yes, ma'am. And, you know, much like, even if, let's say, they change the name of their LLC, they have to go back to the board and explain why. You know, if they transfer the business, has to go back to the board. The conditional use permits are very, very specific. And if any change of it can, you know, actually void the permit. And the permit's revocable if they don't comply, or if any conditional use permit issued, if it's in non-compliance, it is revocable by the Board of Zoning Adjustments. Staff
Is there
would
any
take that.
type of inspection, is there anything that we would do to make, you're gonna ask that please, guys, that, I understand the ends of it, but to get to the ends, let's say that you are on the street and you know how Frankfurt's small enough and somebody comes up to you and says, well, there's this facility out there and I heard that it was set for 16 and I know that they've got 22 out there or whatever. So does that constitute you or precipitate you to go out there to make a visit,
Yes.
on-site visit?
Yes, it does. If a conditional use permit is issued, my staff has the authority to inspect the facility to ensure compliance.
Okay.
Because once again, it's very specific. The permit's very specific.
And you're saying at any time, just to kind of piggyback off of what the judge said, so anytime it doesn't have to be an announced visit or?
No, it doesn't. No. As a courtesy, I would notify the owners and say, hey, here's what I've heard. You want to meet me out there? We'll discuss it. Show me around. But it's it's a compliance issue. And so once again, if they're out of compliance, I'll give them an opportunity to correct it. But if they say no, this is what we want to do, then back to the board they go. And I would ask them to cease the non-compliance until they obtain a reconsideration by the Board of Zoning Adjustment. Once again, that permit is very specific. It clearly states out all the conditions they have to comply with as part of that issuance, and then it becomes part of the public record at the Board of Zoning Adjustments as well. Because we issue a separate placard that says conditional use permit with its own unique number specific to the owner, and we list all the conditions.
He's on the board.
So yes,
Yeah.
you're on the Board of Zoning Adjustments. You're familiar with that.
Oh, and I don't mean to bring this up to lengthen this discussion, but I do think it needs to be brought up and talked about for the future where or if, and that is site distance from one building to another, location, you know what I'm talking about, what are your thoughts on that? Because that has definitely been brought up from the beginning, on corner to corner of one building, and plus buffer.
Well, once again, I still don't have a recommendation to the court on that. It would, I'll say it again, it'd be an arbitrary number that I would throw out.
Okay.
And,
I'm not asking you to do that, so.
Yes, but, once again, with conditional use permits, they are site-specific. And the board does have the authority to impose any condition they deem appropriate, to ensure compatibility with the surrounding area, things of that nature. And of course, Squire Booth's familiar with that. So if during testimony, if someone says,
Arduous process.
yes, it is. But, if someone stands up or a board member says, hey, I'm familiar with this place and wow, you can see it from 2 different streets, we'd really like to have you put some trees in or something, then the board has that authority.
Okay.
And if the applicant doesn't accept it, then the permit's not issued. Or they can appeal later on.
Okay.
So, a lot of flexibility with the permit before it's issued, in terms of what the board can impose, because staff has a specific list of criteria we have to analyze to present to the board, and then the board can make the other judgment calls as to appropriateness and any additional measures that would, assist with compatibility. So, but like for instance, if you put in a distance separation and you start looking back at the zones that they're allowed, in an RA zoning, you could have homes that are 20 feet apart. So basically you would be establishing a regulation that would literally prohibit something that you're allowing it in to begin with. So, same thing with commercial districts,
Okay.
So let me ask,
Go ahead.
Judge Matt, so let me ask this, because at the April 12th, and there's been no full transcription of the record, but at the April 12th Board of Zoning Adjustments, a member, Mr. Buchanan, talked about, he said, you're talking about a piece of property where there are 2 residences, you're going to allow 55 people to live there. It's a drastic change. I have a problem with saying that this does affect the character present in the area, doesn't fit harmoniously. And he mentioned, it doesn't matter if you're quilting or you're beekeeping or you're doing other things. And he said, he even made a statement, said that it seems like the rural residential zoning district is a catch-all for everything, and that's just the way the fiscal court has allowed it to become. So with a statement like that, how do we address an issue that the Board of Zoning Adjustments stated in a meeting? How do we, since you said I can't come up with a benchmark, and I'll use that term, you didn't use the term. I don't know, how do we do that? How do we come up with a benchmark that would assist, because it's already been stated that they have a challenge. The fiscal court didn't address it. We're sitting here trying to address it. How do we figure that out?
So that board member, a portion of his statement came directly from the zoning ordinance. Fit harmoniously within the character of the area.
Absolutely.
And so the court has adopted that provision in the conditional use permit assessment that staff uses to make a recommendation to the board. So the board, if the way the regulations are written, if you don't meet all those criteria, then you can be denied. All right, you have to meet them all. So if the majority of the board in that case agreed with that board member that it doesn't fit harmoniously, and they all voted that way, then it wouldn't be approved. So once again, it's site specific, and that's why that criteria seems sort of broad. It's more of a judgment call. So, and I don't know about how you can quantify that per se, because every site's going to be different.
And I think that was the point here.
Yes.
But the point coming back to, it seems like the rural residential zoning district is a catch-all for everything, and that's just the way the fiscal court has allowed it to become. How do we not, based on that statement, how do we not allow it to become thus?
Well,
I don't, what do we put in place to use as kind of the guiding buoys?
Well, and that statement, I don't agree with it 100%, because rural residential, while it is more flexible than your standard single-family detached, it only allows, 1 dwelling per lot, and then over 5 acres, you're allowed to have agricultural activities, okay? All the other zones you're not allowed to have, except the chicken ordinance. But otherwise, in my opinion, the agricultural district is more of the catch-all, because it allows campgrounds and storage buildings and all kinds of stuff, which you wouldn't necessarily associate with agriculture. So once again, it goes back to this proposal, or the regulation we refer to now as a residential facility, and so that's why I think rural residential, along with RA and RB and the others that the court adopted, are consistent with that. It's consistent with the residential character. Now, what's going on inside the walls of the individuals staying there, they're still just living there and doing daily duties and going to the grocery store and that kind of stuff. So I don't know that, I don't agree with his statement 100%. It's not a catch-all in my opinion.
Okay? Questions?
So we also talked about, and I think we talked about some other areas, but I think we all agree, or I guess the majority of the court discussed the RB, where there are other areas, and I think Squire Moore had mentioned a couple of areas. I'm just going to ask that question. Thank you again.
Squire Moore, did you hear that question from Squire Sebastian?
Yeah, if we get RB out, that'll be a step in the right direction.
Okay. All right, any other discussion? Squire Blackburn.
Robert, I just want to thank you for the work you did on the definition and clarifying that. I think that takes away a lot of questions that folks have.
Mm-hmm.
And also on the regulatory agencies, a lot of this happens before, some of it during time of occupancy, and then some of it after, during the flow up. So I think you've helped us cover a whole lot of bases, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm pleased with the definition as well. Wish I'd done it on the front end, but I appreciate the court.
Well, there's a lot of
Bringing that up.
questions I mean, and there's probably still gonna come things up that
Oh, yeah.
we missed.
We know that.
But I feel
Right.
like we've done a really good job.
I do
And
too.
I think you've done a lot of research on this. I know you have.
Yes.
And I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay, Robert, you'll be back on in just a few minutes. Probably the best thing if you just wait and we'll get to you. You got two or three, one is this item on RV.
Yes.
And then you got a couple more, so we'll just wait until we get to that point in the agenda, okay?
All right, thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Okay, the next item on the agenda is authorization to approve, for approval of minutes from a regular meeting of October the 13th. Any questions on that? The next item on the agenda is authorization approval of minutes from our special meeting of October the 27th. Any questions on that? The next item on the agenda is authorization for approval of the county clerk's claim for preparing tax bills. Mr. Hancock, is he here? Okay. Any questions on the? Yeah, he's a little busy, yeah. Any questions about the tax bills? All right, you got a question on that? Are you gonna have a statement on that? Chris, you wanna go on into the tax bill since that's pretty smooth transition?
Sure. Morning.
Good morning.
I have this year's tax roll for property, and it's up just a little over 2 million from last year, so that's good news.
Chris, because we're on TV and for the general public, your hours of operation, and if you would kind of give just for people that don't know, where the sheriff's office is and how do city residents pay their taxes, if you kind of go over that, just FYI for everybody.
Yeah, we're open 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. You can pay in person or use our drop box, and we take cash, check, and credit card.
Okay.
Of course, you pay your city tax bill the same way, but you go to City Hall.
Okay.
And we're at 974 River Bend Road.
All right, and the 2% discount is valid from X till
Till the end of the month. So
through
these,
the end of the month.
right, so December 1st, you'll be at face value.
Okay.
And we've already, I think, collected close to 3 million in the first 3 days, so it's going good. We
Awesome.
appreciate people paying.
Awesome. Okay, any questions on tax bills? Any questions on that? Sheriff, thank you, and most of all, thank your staff, because I know this time of year, your staff is really busy. We see the lines.
Yes, we have a new lady that's working in our office that was working in the mall and over in Shelbyville or Simpsonville, so she said, this is not too bad if you do Black Fridays at the mall.
Yeah.
So she's okay with it.
Okay,
And there's no refunds here usually.
Squire Booth?
I was wondering which method is the most popular in those 3 days of collection? Was it,
It's checks mainly,
Check.
yes.
and do they put it in the drop box?
No, most people come in, the lines, I mean, we've had steady flow, but I mean, it probably takes 5 minutes or less would be my guess at the longest wait.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, any other questions? All right, Chris, thank you.
I have one more thing, I think of the animal.
Yep, okay, go ahead.
So Richard, our dog catcher, keep him in your thoughts and prayers. He's gonna have a pretty big, medical event, so we're thinking he'll be out for 3 months, maybe minimum. And we got with our constable, Richard Sandifer, and he's willing to do the animal control part-time, so I think that'll be good. He can step in and do it. He's done it before, he knows what to do, so that way the calls are covered.
The county attorney has recommended that he take some type of animal control training. I did take some training online that is free, and I can send that information to you if you want to pass along to
Sure.
Constable Sanford.
And we'll take the calls that we can. Deputies just aren't equipped to do some things like, bites, hurt animals, et cetera. So we'll just use him as needed, and that's when he'll be compensated.
Go ahead, Squire Muller.
Square Booth is first.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm sorry.
His, Richard's, I'm not Richard,
His wife, Mary?
Yeah, his wife Mary has been taking part of his duties, right?
Yeah, she's actually part-time and your hours are limited, so it's my understanding she does not have very many hours left for this whole year, so I don't know how many of the county calls she's going to be able to take.
That's a good
I
point,
see.
Squire Booth. And that's the reason we're having to go this route, because her hours are so short, because of the amount of time that she's worked. Because when you're part-time, you're limited to 99 hours per month, and she's used quite a bit of her hours over that for the remainder of the year.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Squire?
Sheriff, thank you for being here. So, question, so it says that your office is gonna be taking over the calls and using that accordingly. So where do the calls go now? How does it work now compared to what we're proposing?
It's really not any different other than Richard works set hours every week, his 40 hours or 37 and a half, so he's out. Dispatch radios him like they would a deputy because they know when he comes out, he calls that he's working. So they'll just send us the calls, and if we feel like we need an animal control officer, then they'll call him out. That's how it's gonna work.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Miller, what the difference there is with Mr. Page as animal control officer, he serves under the pleasure of the sheriff as it stands. Mr. Page is a constitutional officer on it, or Mr. Sanford is a constitutional officer on his own. So you can't have two constitutional officers in this fashion working under each other. So he would be the animal control officer and be dispatched, much like the sheriff would be dispatched
Okay.
by the train. Fred mentioned this, because he will stand on his own as an animal control officer.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Questions? And we have a lot of trust and faith in Mr. Sanford. He does so much work in the community and with the kids, and helps you, and does other type of work, helps community, churches, and all kinds of gatherings. So Richard is a very trusted and reliable constable in this, helping our community, right?
I
Right,
agree.
Sheriff?
You're right. I think this will be easy, little transition. He can step in and do it when we need him, and I think it'll be good for everybody.
Okay. This may end up requiring a bit of change in some transfer of money, because Mr. Page does have sick time, and so it will require some budget transfers probably. Okay? Any other questions?
I know Richard Sanford was, regularly patrolled the traffic in front of the Second Street School, but the Tiger Project, I read in one dispatch from Chuck Knowles that that was, traffic could not be stopped on Second Street. I'm confused about that. Or is he still doing that?
As far as I know, he's still there. I know they changed the traffic pattern, how you can go in. They've done some things different, but I've not been down there. So the only news I get is from my wife because she works there.
Uh-huh,
So,
and he's still doing.
but as far as I know, he still does there and then in front of Franklin County High School.
Yeah, he's still down there.
Okay.
And he would not be doing any of this service while this wouldn't take away from that role as protecting kids in that area. All right,
Thank you.
thank you again. All right, the next item on the agenda is an update. Jeffrey Sizemore was sworn in. He was unopposed, and he was sworn in as a constable the other day. It's just an FYI, he wanted to go to school, and by swearing him in early, it would allow him to get in the queue to go to school at a reduced rate. And that's what, that was good for him. good for us to get as many constables as we can, get trained to the best that we can for them. The next item on the agenda is the first reading of
So are the constables under the fiscal court or under sheriff's department?
They're standalone.
Standalone.
Constitutional office.
They're sworn officers.
Okay.
They're constitutional
But
officers.
the fiscal court does have ordinances related to what they can and can't do.
So there's a policy for the emergency equipment that the fiscal court has to approve every year. So Constable Sanford comes in usually in December to request use of his emergency equipment for the next calendar year, and there are stipulations set on that policy on what they have to do to meet that criteria. And that criteria is always evaluated by the county attorney before it comes to the agenda. What's on here today is the bond, which is required by statute that fiscal court accept the bond, and as soon as it's voted on, then I will file it with the county clerk's office.
So does, just another question if I may. So does this give this gentleman permission to use lights and
No.
things like Sanford does?
No.
He has to come back, he has to have proof of insurance, he has to have liability insurance, he has to have this. We have.
There's a whole nother
Yeah, there's a whole.
step,
yes,
steps to
right.
do that, okay.
This is
I just want to make sure I know what I'm
only-
voting on. This is just,
Only
okay.
actually, it's not a vote, it's
Well,
just.
okay, yeah, you know, yep.
Yeah. No,
And I can see what you mean.
Okay, that's fine.
as Timber said, every year a constable has to meet certain guidelines to have lights with their vehicle.
Okay, but that has to be brought back.
And that has to
us.
be brought back to fiscal court.
Just asking.
Every year, we currently only have one constable that has made that request and
Yeah.
approved.
That's what I thought. Okay, thank you.
Every constable needs a bond.
Yes,
And
that is
have to be
required by law.
bonded, yes. Yeah. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 33, Taxation of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances by adding a definition section and amending Section 33.01, tax imposed. And Rick, you've gone through this, and you want to discuss this with us. Thank you.
Yes, Judge, thank you. And again, Court, good morning. In the 2022 General Assembly, they passed House Bill 8, which amongst other things increased a lot of taxes if you paid attention to what you're paying taxes on. Specifically, it involved and I'll quote on it, to include the use of every occupancy, suite, room, cabins, lodges, campsites, accommodations, et cetera, charged by any hotel, motel, et cetera. It's defined as the rent portion. We'd met with the city for their version to make these consistent within the county. Has to be passed by the first of the year. Ms. Harrod put the substitutions in there, and I think these need to be done ASAP, given the requirements of House Bill 8. And that's what we've done and made the inclusions on the tax imposed to make sure that the county can collect these taxes and make sure that the Grand Theater taxes are still protected, just like they are. And I would ask you to give first consideration and pass it by the first year. So with this caveat, there's going to be some opportunities in the 2023 year with fiscal court, and I hope that you all will coordinate with the city of Frankfort to try to coordinate the collection of these, because this also includes Airbnb companies. It includes folks who are advertising out to be collected also by the entities that are booking them. That's going to be difficult to do because we don't know which ones they are. So Ms. Antonucci's putting those together and trying to identify who are the Expedia kind of equivalent for all of these entities in one coordinated fashion. And it's probably honestly going to be easier for you to try to coordinate it, since the county and the city has the same ordinance, within one group ordinance, much like you do occupational tax. But the priority was to increase the definition at this point, and then you can address that in 2023. or I hope you address it in 2023.
This has been going on for years about the people not accepting lodgers but not paying taxes on it, like the hotels and the other.
That is exactly correct, ma'am, and I think the General Assembly recognized that problem, and that's why they included the expanded definition as we put in on the rent portion on the very top.
Good
Okay,
idea.
okay, any questions on that? This is the first reading and the vote will come at our November 22nd meeting.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for your work on this. I know it's been difficult. Thank you, though. Robert, if you would come back up, we've got 3 items that we want you to address, and we'll start with a second reading, approval of an ordinance amending the table of special ordinances, Section 1 zoning map change. We have several residents that are here today that further identifies PVA map number 086-30-11-001.00 located at the intersection of Isaac Shelby Circle West and Metcalf Drive from limited commercial CL to 2 dwelling district. Mr. Hewitt.
Yes, sir. So at the last court meeting, there were concerns about, the different uses that could occur in the 2 dwelling district, which is single-family dwellings and duplexes. So as I stated to the court then, preliminary plat has been filed with my office. It's out for review that depicts 17 single-family lots. That has to go back to the Planning Commission for their final consideration and approval. So, it's a down zoning, and it provides us a better transition from the residential to commercial. Otherwise, Governor's Place could be looking at commercial buildings in front of their houses. So, single-family lots, it can be comparable lot sizes based on the, as I mentioned before, density that the RD provides. So you can get a footprint similar to those in Governor's Place. And I recommended approval.
Squire Blackburn, did you have a question?
Well, I agree with Robert. I think it's something that I don't think was addressed in the plan when it was developed, having commercial businesses facing residential houses on the same street. I think this creates a good buffer. I did have some concerns, and in between the first reading and now, I've talked to the residents, and I think a lot of those concerns have been alleviated one way or the other, so I don't have any more concerns. Just with drainage, we want to make sure that we cover that drainage.
Definitely.
Squire Muller?
Thank you, Judge. So, Robert, a couple things. So, it's my understanding that this will not be part of the Governor's Place. It's its own.
Well, I have, in terms of its relationship or not to their restrictions, I have not completed that research right now. So I'm sorry I don't have that answer.
That's okay. Is there any type of, because to me, Governor's Place is a very nice neighborhood. The homes are very nice. Is there any kind of restrictions or anything as far as how these homes need to be constructed or what they look like in comparison to roads right across the street?
The only requirement is that, the front door faces the street. Other than that, we have no design standards.
I think the question is, does the neighborhood association or is there such a thing as a neighborhood association equated to this? And if so, are there restrictions based on what was originally adopted?
So while Governor's Place does have recorded restrictions, whether or not this property is subject to it is the research I haven't completed yet.
Okay.
So my apologies, because the restrictions should and often do specify exactly what's under that restriction. If it says, if Governor's Place is 4 sections and it only refers to sections 1 through 3, then unless the restrictions get amended, section 4 is not subject to it. So those are things that have to be looked into, much like Duckers. It's like Duckers 12 and all kinds of stuff. So they all have their own little different restrictions, if you will, so.
And then just to recap.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Just to recap, piggybacking on Squire Blackburn, so the water is a huge issue, Slickaway Branch, but you did state, I think in our special meeting, that there's a project going on right now to try to figure out Governor's Place in a whole as far as how that's being taken care of. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah, there are drainage issues in Governor's Place, you know, prior to any development going on out there, and so that's something the county works on, or goes out to look at every year. I know there's a lot of culverts that get washed out. You know, since that collection system is within the right of way, you know, that's a subdivision I think that the county needs to look at, a capital improvement project to try to do some remedial measures to help, you know, reduce the damage that those flood events or those heavy rain events cause, because you know, in terms of emergency management, you don't want a culvert washing out and you can't get to someone's home. And so we need to look at it once again in a watershed basis, but, you know, there's no detention component in that subdivision, so we need to work on something to help reduce those larger events and the damage they cause.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Robert, we do have our county engineer working on some retention basins, and as part of the projects that we're looking at in helping the residents out there now, correct?
That is correct. So every development within the Slickaway Branch watershed is required to provide an additional 25% storage capacity. The Planning Commission's granted me that authority, and we impose it.
Above what's normally prescribed.
Above the standard, yes. We tell the developers on the front end that you're in this watershed and this is the requirement.
Squire Tracy?
Robert, I know in our road committee meetings, drainage culverts have been discussed for Governor's Place, and some have actually been put in. So with this new development, will that be put on hold? If this passes, will that be put on hold until you see what type of effect that this could potentially have on the lower end?
No, you talking about the county doing more work on the culverts? No, we wouldn't put a hold on that at all. This development is providing stormwater calculations to the county engineer as part of the plat process, because this property, if approved, would drain into the collection system, you know, that currently, you know, goes down Isaac Shelby and then off to the east as well. So we would have those numbers plugged in, and so once again, it needs to be a holistic analysis of where the water is breaking, because not all the water in Governor's Place goes the same place. You know, it kind of splits when it gets to the back.
Right.
So,
Okay.
but no, we won't stop anything the county's doing.
Okay, but knowing that, additional water on top of the problem that already occurs, how's that gonna be resolved?
Well, a lot of that, I think, comes from the Leestown Road widening and how they directly discharged, you know, into that area, because everything heads to the north. So I've got a copy of those construction plans, so we can look at that. We can meet with the state, see if there's some kind of things we can do to their outfalls. You know, the Isaac Shelby West drainage system is enormous. I mean, it's so deep and so large in those culverts, you can almost walk through standing up. Unless there's some upstream detention constructed specific to that leg, it's going to be difficult to do much of anything.
Okay. And then not having your information in regards to how this proposed development will affect, or how it's going to intertwine with the HOA or the rules of Governor's Place. How do you see that, or do you see that having any sort of negative effect on what they've been able to accomplish as what I would call a successful neighborhood?
No, I don't think it would hinder it at all. A builder, the builder that I've spoken with is looking at a price point similar to what is in Governor's Place, even though the lots are a little bit smaller. They're going to be higher end homes in the over 200,000 range. So I think it'll be a very nice product and something that you don't see in Frankfort because of being an out-of-town builder.
Okay. And then you referenced smaller lots. Knowing that there's going to be 17 homes, or proposed 17 homes on those lots, smaller lots, in your professional opinion, does that or does that not change the characteristics of the rest of the neighborhood?
Not necessarily, because the RD designation allows more lot coverage. So you can have a bigger home even though it's a smaller lot.
But does having those smaller lots, in your opinion, change the characteristics of the rest of the neighborhood?
I do not believe it does. I think it serves as a transition
Okay.
from the larger lots, then you get into these smaller lots, and then you have commercial. So, and it's a lot better than having apartments or townhomes or anything else, which I think then would change that character.
Right.
These are going to be single-family homes constructed, and once again, the RD gives you a larger percentage lot coverage than you can get in an RB.
Right. Well, and I think ultimately I see it lowering it from CL to RD would be less intrusive per se in regards to the subdivision.
I would agree.
So
I would hate to live on Metcalf and look out my door and see a tattoo shop or
yeah,
something.
that could ultimately be a great thing for the neighborhood and the community coming in.
Right.
Okay.
So-
And I guess my last question would be, knowing that it's been stated in this report that we had, knowing that it doesn't meet the comprehensive plan, what would be knowing that others have been voted down in the past? And obviously the comprehensive plan is huge. We hear about it all the time.
Right.
So what would be your thoughts in regards to individuals coming back saying, hey, mine didn't meet the plan, this has been stated, it doesn't meet the plan? Where'd we go wrong?
In terms of the plan itself,
Correct.
in my opinion, that plan went wrong in that it did not provide a transition.
Okay.
Okay? Just like when you've got industrial and residential butting up to one another. It's not good. Just that's how Duckers, the village of Duckers is. It butts right up to industrial properties, and there's always a problem. As a land use planner, we like to transition uses so that there's not that direct conflict or incompatibility.
Right.
So I think it was a bad idea to have commercial all the way up to a residential street.
Right, and as I stated, I think anytime you can lower, and that gives you an opportunity to, again, to be less intrusive, I think that's something that definitely needs to be looked at, and really needs to be probably addressed more often than not.
Oh, I agree. So in this case, the character of the area, has established itself as residential with commercial fronting the main highway. And so that was our finding that while it didn't comply completely with the comprehensive plan, specifically the future land use map, from a land use perspective, it's the correct zoning, or it's a transition zoning that should have been considered in the first place.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Robert, this is a perfect example of an updated comprehensive plan in any direction that you go doesn't solve all the issues. There always will be, no matter how comprehensive the comprehensive plan update is, there will be issues, and those issues will rear their heads, and as part of the process, we come back, we look at it, we see what's the best, in the best interest, and we adopt or change or whatever. So even on this board, for some of you that have only been here 4 years, it is clear that in that 4-year period, we see issues, and with 2 years from now, which is the date that they're saying that it may take to completely redo the comprehensive plan, there will be issues. There are always going to be issues. So I think the important piece here is with Squire Tracy's questioning and your response is that as part of this, what we see are the right things to do to help people. The comprehensive plan is for our community, and there are other pieces of it that are for specific neighborhoods that we see this as an issue for this particular neighborhood that was not addressed years ago, and we come back and we change it to do the right thing.
And I think-
Perfectly stated, yes.
I think it proves out too that the goals and policies are the guiding principles, and the land use map is a firm reference. But we've had issues where the land use map has been the deciding factor, whereas if it was in this case, it would go a different direction. So I think we all need to keep in mind that the guiding principles are the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan. And that's the most important part.
Yes, and, you know, since I've been a land use planner in this community for over 2 decades, both for the city and the county, you know, I can now laser in on areas that I'm aware of as, you know, for development, whether it be based on new infrastructure being constructed or repaired, and then, you know, try to catch these sites, like what we're talking about today, so that we're able to get these transitions and make things more appropriate for neighborhoods, because our commercial corridors will begin to build out. It's important to protect the residents, but at the same time provide them goods and services to make this a great place to live. So corridor studies are also very important to consider during a comprehensive plan.
It's a balance.
It is.
Squire Booth?
Yeah, are there blue line streams going through Governor's Place? I remember from my first term, there was problems because the blue line streams cannot be obstructed, and some neighbors were obstructing them, so the water amassed in the yards that were adjacent to the obstruction.
Yes, now the channel along Isaac Shelby Circle West may have been a blue line at one time. Currently it's not, because it doesn't flow water all the time. There was also an intermittent blue line stream in the now known as Copperleaf development that was fed from a pond up by the road, but that had since been filled in when that property was being developed. So, and then of course 421 changed things as well. You know, so you're breaking up watersheds, you're breaking up flows and redirecting them, and so.
So there's no natural stream running through Governor's Place anymore?
Not unless it's a subsurface stream, which wouldn't be surprising at all. But not a surface water stream
Okay.
that I'm aware of.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions on this particular issue? Okay. All right, Robert, let's go to the next one.
All right.
This authorization to approve a resolution requesting the Franklin County Planning and Zoning Commission conduct a hearing to amend the Franklin County Code of Ordinances to remove the rural residential RB zoning district from section 155.085 relating to residential recovery facilities.
So this is only one of the 3 items that I was tasked to do, was to have RB removed. That was very clear in the last meeting. I would request that the court amend this resolution to include the revised definition as well, if you wouldn't mind, so I could get both forwarded to the planning commission and get this taken care of. I think the definition is extremely important.
Okay, do you want that verb, how do you recommend we put that verbiage in there?
And you could just say amend the definition in section 155 point, I think, 010, I believe.
Remember. We need to amend the definition, and then we'll need to put all of that in there, I think, right?
Well,
As part of what they're gonna approve?
Yeah, I'll put it in my staff report to the commission, and then that language will come back to you via an ordinance.
Okay, so
If
we
everyone's
should
fine.
say that with the amended definition as well being sent to the planning and zoning for review, is that right?
That's what I would
Okay.
suggest,
Okay,
yes.
is that okay with
If you all
everybody?
don't mind.
Yes.
155.010.
Is that it? I don't have it with me,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Okay.
Could you amend that when you're finished with your presentation and email it?
Be more than happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Robert, let's go to the next one. And that is putting Whispering Pines Drive and White Pine Court into the county road system.
Oh, thank goodness. This has been a long time coming. This development originated about 14 years ago, prior to the recession. Infrastructure was installed. Previous developer went bankrupt. The bank took the property back, mothballed it, and then attempts throughout the years to get it up and going again were staggered. So the developer, Haddock's Construction, acquired all the property from the bank and has completed all the improvements, brought everything up to the county standards, had everything cambered and tested, reconstructed the roads, repaired the base failures, and within 12 months has built that entire subdivision to capacity. I'm very pleased to have this before you today, and it's a very nice development. It looks very nice out there. Once again, it's a different product than what we have throughout Franklin County because this is an out-of-town developer. I'm pleased with the improvement. John Mitchell has been out to the site as well. He agrees with the acceptance of these improvements into the road system as well as I do.
We visited that before. We visited that.
Yes.
Okay. Squire Blackburn?
What about the, I know we've got a lot of unfinished sidewalks, broken curbs, damaged utility boxes, there's trash in some of the stormwater inlets. Are those things that need to be corrected before we adopt this? Is this something, I feel like the developer, that falls in his purview to correct, but if we adopt the road and the curbs are connected to the road and the stormwater drains are connected to that, are we also adopting the stormwater drainage and all that from the road?
Yes. It's part of the collection.
In the past, as best I can remember, every road that we've adopted, except one because of reasons of COVID, we made a site visit to. I'd like to go have a site visit on this road, and then have maybe some of those things addressed to where we understand who's responsible, and because when those people bought initially, we got a guy there been there 3 years. I'm sure he was assuming these things were going to be taken care of, and I don't want to give the developer an out by us taking it over, and then all the residents of Franklin County have to take care of their issues to get them up to where they need to be. And I feel like it's the developers.
Have you had a site visit, Robert? Have you been out there to see?
Yes, I have. And if John Mitchell's on, he was just there the other day as well. The only sidewalk sections I'm aware of are the 2 homes that are currently under construction that Mr. Haddock's is building, and obviously we don't want those poured yet until the construction's complete. So, John, did you notice anything, any damage?
Yeah, just like what I told you when I went out and looked, it was one looked like the gas company may have damaged the sidewalk, but they usually go back and put that in, so that was my only concern. And the 2 unfinished homes, it's the only sidewalk problem I see.
Yeah.
Squire Tracy?
And I did relay that information to the developer.
Okay.
Yes, sir. Robert, who requested this? I know in the past, we've always received a letter from the person that's requesting it to be brought in. There's also, I always thought there was, I guess, the road department's report and maybe a fire department report as well. Is that something we're going away from?
No, sir. This is going through let me answer the first question. The developer, Paul Haddock of Haddock's Construction, sent me an email requesting this be brought in. I apologize for not putting it in your packet, but it's a very short statement. Please, I've completed my improvements and please forward it for adoption. This project is coming through the subdivision development plan regulations, in which my department reviews the construction plans and engineering, and then when it meets county standards, then I present it to the court for adoption, and if adopted, then it becomes John's road. Of course, the fire chief has been out there before. I do involve the county engineer and the road superintendent, and then myself during construction and at stages in which the developer says, hey, I'm ready to do this, or I'm ready to do that. We're on site multiple times. It relates to sidewalk locations in relation to utility conflicts and things of that nature. So this differs from your orphan road process, in which you are required to do a site visit. It is required to have X number of homes. It is required to have so many linear feet. But in this case, a developer could literally construct the road as a provision of development in your regulations and never have a home on the property and get it adopted. So, because developers have two ways of doing it. You can either put up a letter of credit or a bond for all the public improvements, and then I'm allowed to sign your plat that you can record, or the developer at risk can construct all the improvements to county standards, get them adopted, and then they get to file a plat. So either way, it's an administrative process through your subdivision development regulations.
Thank you.
So can the verbiage be said, and I know it is assuming that it's, not assuming, but you all have already made a site visit, John's recommending it, you're recommending it, that we take it in based on the approval of John Mitchell, and based on the approval of John Mitchell and you as planning and zoning director, that this come into the system. So with that, and by that stating that all irregularities of construction means that they must be resolved before it is official, something along that line. Do you understand what I'm saying? Squire Blackburn is bringing up something that obviously there's some discrepancy between what he's saying and what John Mitchell is saying and what you're saying. What I don't want to do is get this, unfortunately, from this subdivision caught in the middle of an issue and then it starts snowing, and then you don't get the snow, and then once again they're back into, we're not getting our streets scraped and all of that. So obviously they're wanting to get this done before winter time hits, because that is a big issue in these subdivisions.
Correct. And also, in the event that the road sign or the street name sign gets knocked over, you know, if it's not a county road, we don't go out there. You know, we don't replace it. It's not ours. It's not our expense at that time. Now, as it relates to the two sections of sidewalk that aren't constructed as a result of the homes being under construction, if the court would like, I can have them go ahead and pour that sidewalk.
I'd rather you not.
Oh, okay.
You know, they'll tear them up. And,
yeah, I know. But
and that's part. If that's part of the building process, and the developer's going to do that, I don't think anybody has a problem with that. I totally understand that.
This gentleman I've worked with him on many projects.
Cutting them out and putting the road in and putting your water line and your electric, whatever, your gas, all those things, damage, boring under.
Right.
It adds to the complicity of it.
And that's why I waited till just recently to put the final coat on, final asphalt.
But you know, one of the things I had, you know, I've got some residents here tonight, and to be perfectly honest with you, this is in my district. I was embarrassed. I didn't know anything about this until I saw it on the agenda, and like you said, it is different because it's not an abandoned road. It's through this process, but I do think those are some valid concerns, and would you want them to say anything tonight or be able to today?
Yeah, they want to.
Is there any concerns that you guys have?
Well,
I need to come up there. I can stand back here.
If you would stand up and state your name, please.
Yeah, I'm Dan Morgan, 124 Whispering Pines Drive. And a couple things I want to say is when we moved here from Owensboro 3 years ago, we found this slab and this house going up at Whispering Pines, and we contacted the builder, who was not Paul Evans at the time. And we made an offer on it, and he took it, and we moved into a neighborhood that we had no idea who was going to finish it or whether it was going to be finished. So we went down and introduced ourselves to Mr. Hewitt, and a very cordial gentleman. He was very nice to us and gave us lots of information And so we leaned on him a couple of times with different issues going on. And his promise to us was that those curbs, there's a few busted curbs and a few busted drains and utility. These are things that are undone. And we asked if those things were going to be finished before the county takes over the subdivision. And the answer was yes. And then when the blacktop came up, about surfacing the blacktop, several residents had concerns about the entrance of their drives being busted. And nobody's going to fix those. And we were sure they would be fixed before the blacktop. It's not been done. And another thing too, 6 properties were not Paul Haddock's. He didn't build them, he never owned them, and we're one of those 6. So there's kind of this little thing going on with, it's us and them, I guess, if you will. I don't know how else to say it, but we are excited about it. We are excited Mr. Haddock's has taken this quickly in nearly 3 years, has built this subdivision. And I am a representative on the HOA, but that really, at this point, doesn't, it hasn't meant a whole lot because Mr. Haddock's formed a board with him and a couple of his employees. And then last year, they asked for nominations to jump on the board. And a lot of folks out there asked me if I would do it. And so I told them I'd do it. So this year we're supposed to, so the residents really have not had any input to that development. None whatsoever that has, as far as any representative. So I'm here today just representing those folks that have these concerns. And personally, we're excited about it and can't wait till it's finished. I mean, just absolutely. And can I say one more thing?
Yes, sir, please.
About the detentions. Always been a concern of all of us about those detention ponds. They're on private property. They're on people's lots. And so all the residents are being asked to maintain those detention areas that are on private property. It's hard to understand how that works, but there's one in the cul-de-sac in the back. The one in the back in the cul-de-sac was to be removed once phase 2 started. Phase 2 is never going to happen now because that land was purchased by an individual. So there's houses constructed with the rear portion of the house literally into the bank of the detention. So we're just having trouble understanding how we maintain those. What happens if one of those fail? Is the county going to fix that? Or are we all going to fix that? You know, it's a big concern. I think it's an unusual situation when you look at it. And the sidewalks that's not finished, that may never get finished. If you've never been there, you won't understand what I'm saying, but there's a sidewalk that will never be completed because lot number 99 and lot 103 is privately owned by somebody that's not in the subdivision. So that sidewalk stops right here, so it will not ever finish. Although there's an ADA accessible entrance cut into the curb, I don't foresee that sidewalk getting done. So those are the sidewalks we're talking about, not the ones around the houses that haven't been finished yet. Because for the most part, it's all finished. And then there's a fence along the backside that we were told will belong to the county and they will maintain that. Just a lot of questions. And I'm surprised there wasn't some kind of a first reading or something that we could all kind of come down and kind of discuss it earlier instead of now we're getting into the winter. So
first of all, Mr. Morgan, thank you for being here. And,
thank you.
And God bless you for being on the HOA.
Well, it may be short-lived.
If it's all right with the court and all right with you, Robert, I'm going to ask that we hold this vote up until the 22nd. And Robert, if you and John would go out and meet with Mr. Morgan and answer the questions to the best that you can in helping him under the circumstances and getting you all those issues resolved to the best we can. Is that fair enough?
I think that's fair.
We'll do it that way.
I appreciate Mr. Hewitt, though.
Yeah,
He's got a big plate.
You're right, he's got so much on his plate, but the way we should work is, I'm not trying, Squire Blackburn, I'm not trying to rush this.
No, I agree.
And I'm not so sure that the whole court going out there is the issue as opposed to Robert and John in trying to work out some of these issues, okay?
Yeah, my main concern was the residents having questions answered.
Yeah,
And I think Robert and John.
And I think Robert and
most
John
definitely
would be
can do that.
the best avenue of that. So if you would, Mr. Morgan, if you would, Timber, would you go back and get his information, and we'll give that to Robert, and I would expect before the 22nd, you all will have discussion and have a meeting and discuss this to the best of our ability, and with our hopes of trying to get this done, resolved in one form or fashion, that we can get this into the system very quickly, so you don't have to wallow through the snows and
Yeah,
stuff coming.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah, okay, so she'll get that in. Is that fair enough with you to do it that way?
That is fair, and I
Okay.
appreciate the court doing that.
Okay.
Thank you, Judge.
Squire Baller?
Thank you, Judge. And I would agree 100% with you. If I could ask Mr. Hewitt a question. Does this developer, I guess, have a bond or something on this whole area?
Yes,
How much is it?
I'd have to look it up. I have so many letters of credit on file.
Because the other thought is if you and John go out there with Mr. Morgan and put a dollar number on what you think all the improvements are gonna be, I don't wanna hold them up for the snow, but ultimately, if there's a dollar amount that if he doesn't fix it and we had to go in and do it, then the taxpayers wouldn't be paying for it. It would come off of, what he has put up.
Yes. and
Just
that-
another alternative.
That's what it's there for, and
Yeah.
and I maintain those on file in my office. So John and I will go out and take a look, and if I could just address one of the gentleman's questions as relates to the detention basins. Once the court does adopt the improvements, the county is to maintain the detention basin. So, but we ask, we don't want to go out there with a finish mower every week and mow the basins. But if there's obstruction, or if the control structure is damaged, which is concrete, or say the metal grate is stolen off of it or something, the county maintains those things.
Trees start growing in it.
Yes, and it's because that's part of the county's stormwater collection system. We can't just take care of the pipes because they're in the right of way and ignore the basin. It's all one.
Slick away.
So the county maintains the basins for, structural issues that may come up, and then it's not uncommon for them to be platted on private property, because it's no different than side yard drainage. There's many subdivisions where there's a 8-foot wide stormwater drainage easement down the side of each lot line. So, that's where swales go, so you don't get water in each other's basements by pointing your downspouts at one another. So, things of that nature. But he is correct in that on the preliminary plat, which was approved before I even came here, so it was back in 2000, early 2000s, the preliminary plat did show that rear basin by the cul-de-sac as a temporary drainage easement, all right? And he's correct, it was intended, once phase 2 went in, or whichever, phase 2 in the back was to be done, then that basin was to be done away with. I don't know how, but it's what the intent was. And so when I was presented with the final plat, which was consistent with the preliminary plat that the previous administration had already approved, I didn't have a whole lot of leeway to say no to it. But so maintenance of the systems and all that kind of stuff would be responsibility of the county once it's taken in, and then we would ensure that the road name signs are a green field with white lettering as opposed to white if a sign were damaged. But these have specialty street signs as well, street name signs. But anyway, I just want to mention the basins.
I can ask you one more question.
Yes, sir.
So when you all go out to do these site evaluations before, we, the fiscal court, take the roads over, do you all have like a checklist like sidewalks, boxes, curbs, to look at everything other than just the road?
We do that in stages.
Okay.
So, when the road's being constructed, first, goes down the road base. So we make sure that we get the density testing on that, and we get the quantities, say from Mays. And then the curb and gutter line goes in, so we inspect that, and then the base asphalt. So we get copies of those tickets of how much went down, and the depth. And then, of course, final coat usually doesn't come for, a year or so. And then, we just make sure it lines up with the curb. So it's a multi-year process depending on how quick they construct the infrastructure. But
Right, but I'm saying like final, because obviously during construction, and that's how these curbs all got broken, because I went out there and walked it, there's quite a few that are cracked, broken, chipped, so maybe if there's something that could be developed, instead of just saying, the road's okay and they've turned all the paperwork in, just like Mr. Morgan said, to make sure everything's good before we take it over the responsibility.
John and I look at everything. Now, when it comes to, say, a hairline crack in a curb or a quarter-sized chip out of a curb,
Right.
we don't get excited about those kinds of things,
Yep.
because we don't want them cutting out a 3-foot section to fix a quarter-sized chip. I mean, it caused more damage than it would anything else. So, but John and I are, we will go back out and we will walk it, and the developer, I've still got his letter of credit. And if there's something that we see that needs to be replaced, then we'll have him do it. But, otherwise, we use discretion, but of course, it's not as if the curb line got poured yesterday and the asphalt the same day. I mean, they were years apart. So we'll go back and take a look and see what we can
Are the
assess.
letters of credit adjusted for inflation?
No, ma'am, but I have the authority to do so because they are renewable on an annual basis.
Okay. Mr. Morgan and Ms. Morgan, thank you all very much for being here. Thank you for your comments, and we hope to get this resolved and
Thank you.
worked with, okay? Thank you all. So you have another, yes, ma'am?
I'm sorry that I'm not familiar with how the court always works here in your meetings, but
It's okay.
I'm a resident of Governor's Place.
Okay.
Is there one comment that I can add?
There's 2 comments. We'll give you 3. Go ahead.
This Bruce and Janie Staples, we live on Metcalf Drive. Obviously, we have an interest in what happens across the street from us.
Yes, ma'am.
And I will say that Mr. Hewitt and all the parties involved here have done a good job with us to keep us informed. But I do want to remind this court, if I could, that we from day one have had no issue with a single-family home being built across the street from us. The original application from the landowner indicated it was Governor's Place, so I do want to clarify that.
Good point.
It seems that from his original plan, the zoning that was approved by the Planning Commission is now incorrect to what the intent will be. It was 2-family dwelling originally applied for, and that is what has been approved tentatively from the Planning Commission to you. And then plans have changed at the look of the property, the character of the neighborhood, and it is now intended to be a single-family residence. But we are concerned that once this land may be sold, that the next owner has the right to come in and build 2-family dwellings without a restriction of the land use, which we talked about, I believe, or you all talked about at your last meeting.
We did.
We haven't seen anything that actually says that there will be a restriction placed on the property, rather than going back and reapplying under the correct zoning. We're trying to work with the owner and get this accomplished. And rather than to change it all, we wanted to, the 173 residents of Governor's Place would like to see a restriction placed on that property that actually has the wording, single-family detached homes.
I think that's very legitimate.
Not a lot, not a residential word, not a, but something that restricts the next owner of the property or developer or whoever. We want to see something that controls the construction that goes on that land.
Okay.
So other than that, we say we'll walk across the street and welcome to the neighborhood, as long as we have an assurance that from the restrictive covenants, which were, yes, early done, but do have a clause that says that it's perpetual until the residents say it is no longer perpetual, that land will have a complete restriction on it since it's not zoned properly for what's going to happen there. And that's the only thing the residents would ask, that it say specifically, single-family detached dwelling or homes. And then our neighborhood is good to go.
That is perfectly said, well said, thank you, and that, you're right, that was actually the crux of the whole
It was,
discussion
yes.
in
It
our
has
last
been
meeting.
from day one.
So we'll go back to Mr. Hewitt and, Mr. Hewitt, how do you like being on the spotlight? It's a normal day for you?
Yes, it is, thank you. So the mechanism for addressing the neighborhood's concern, as I mentioned last time, is a certificate of land use restriction. That would have to be prepared and filed in the deed room, which would then make it true, make it so.
Perpetuity.
For perpetuity, yes.
And that passes on whether it changes ownership or not?
Correct, because it restricts the land.
It's attached to the land.
It's much like a variance. It stays with the land, not with the owner.
Right.
So,
And is that going to take place here? And does it take place with the developer? Does it take place with the owner? How does it get into motion?
the owner / and/or developer would file that.
Okay.
They would prepare it and file it. So it doesn't require my signature or anything, but it is a KRS 100 form. If the developer were to do that.
Go ahead, Squire Tracy.
Thanks, Judge. I'll go to you,
Yes.
if that's okay.
Absolutely.
You referenced that the proposed development changed midstream, but yet it didn't start over. Is that accurate? Or the process didn't start over?
The application, as I have seen it, says that it was intended to rezone to a two RD, or whatever that is, a two dwelling zone change. The residents indicated that the original intent was townhomes or duplexes. I'm not sure what. And that would completely change the character of Governor's Place. Also, the amount of concrete from the footprint of construction to 40 driveways on Metcalf Drive can't be even thought of. That is a mainstream traffic area. So the owner changed his plans from that to 17 small lot, single-family lots. But the zoning was never changed to correctly fit residential lots. With single-family detached dwelling lots, much like we are across the street and 170 people in our neighborhood.
So if the application changed, why wasn't it started over for the zone to go back in?
Because the requested zoning of RD allows for single-family detached homes as a permitted use.
But on a smaller lot. That's
Correct.
why
Correct.
that's why the owner wanted RD, so he could have smaller lots.
Well, originally it was going to be townhomes on the one lot.
Oh,
All 4 acres.
Yes. Even though the developer in this case was not required to file a preliminary development plan or a concept plan or anything, but they did share that with me so that we could do the analysis of utilities and fire protection and things of that nature. So and then, there was testimony at the hearing, considering, townhomes or the potential duplexes or whatever. And then, the developer heard those concerns and had an engineer prepare a plat that I gave you at your last meeting. And they said, hey, we want to go to single-family lots. So you don't have to change the application because it's a permitted use.
Is the developer the same individual as the owner?
Yes. Well, it's under an LLC.
So would there be any problems with putting the language in there? I think Judge Will said that's a great solution. Is there any problems to put that in there that basically will guarantee that this is what you're going to do, what you say you're going to do?
There's no problem, I just can't require it. But it's not a problem at all.
Owner has to require it.
Or, I mean, oftentimes owners or developers will do it to ensure and guarantee, the appearance of and the constructability of what they own.
We just have to realize as the residents there that the way it is currently zoned still allows for townhomes or duplexes. If there is no restriction put on this to single-family detached homes, we have changed the entire neighborhood.
Squire Blackburn?
I think the crux of the matter is this zone change request has come to us as a recommendation from the Planning Commission.
Yes.
And they recommended that it be changed. The finding facts that they've had are what we're to consider to vote this up or down. And I think adding something in the middle of the mix changes those parameters and can delegitimize the process. My thing is, knowing all that, I always look to my constituents on how they feel about it to base my decision. So I understand all of it, but my constituents have to be happy with the fact or unhappy with the fact for me to base my vote. So I don't know, and the time constraint that we have on this is it's the driving factor.
Yes. And as it relates to process, when I review zone map amendment request, I have to look at the full potential of what could occur there, all right? And so in my analysis, I considered both single-family detached, single-family attached, and two-family attached. Those are all the possibilities that can occur. So when I'm looking at a zoning request, I have to see it all, see the whole picture. Because just if someone submits a plan to me in conjunction with their zone map amendment request, it's just a picture. To me it is, because it can change. So that's why I look at everything, look at the whole thing. Now,
unless you have restrictions, unless you have
right
concise things.
Right. Now, in your minutes, you'll see the Planning Commission required the plat to come back before them. Okay, originally they said development plan, which would have been townhomes. So I corrected them saying, hey, a plat's been filed with my office, it's not a development plan, please make clear that you're going to want to see the final plat. So they did make that correction in their motions and reflected in the minutes. If a zone change decision by the fiscal court can be appealed for up to 30 days, okay? So it would, a landowner is not likely to file any type of restriction until the process is complete. And, to understand, because why would anyone want to restrict their own land and then your decision get overturned and now they're stuck with something?
How would appeal work? Who does that go to? Who hears?
Circuit Court.
Okay.
Robert, we're looking for, is there anybody in this room today, Robert, that could speak to assurances that would make the landowners feel better about what is going on here? Because I see this going in a direction that we may not have enough votes to do this because of assurances. And I think the developer has said a couple things to you and tried to make assurances, so I'm asking for some help here to help what everybody says is the right thing according to what we hear everybody's saying. So is there somebody here today that could speak to that? If not, once again, we're back again, is there some assurance that we can have as the fiscal court for the residents of Metcalf Drive that these will be single-family residents?
Well, let me take a look around the room. Yeah, there.
Oh, there is, okay.
There might be someone here.
Okay.
Do we have a volunteer?
Thank you, Robert. Can we call on that somebody? Oh, it's Mr. Jones. Okay, Mr. Jones, welcome, thank you.
Yes, John Squires. So obviously, we're getting a little stray here because the decision of this court should be based on the public testimony and only on the public testimony. We've kind of gone away from that with the public speaking here, which I have no objection to what she said at all, but
We weren't allowed.
obviously
We weren't allowed.
it's not typical that we would do this. But now that we've done it, opened that door, I'm going to walk on through. So my client has executed a certificate of land use restriction that prohibits the use of the property for anything other than 17 single-family residential units.
Okay.
In my possession, it's signed. It cannot be filed for 30 days after this court acts, 31 days, because if I were to file it today and says it can only be single-family, and you all vote and turn the zone change down, that I've got a commercial piece of property, zone commercial, that I'm bound to only be single-family. I can't do that. If you vote and you were to approve it today and I file it tomorrow, I can't do that because if someone appeals that decision and they win the appeal, then again, I've got property I have restricted to single family, but it's zone commercial. It's going to be stuck there as green space. Now, maybe they're smarter than I am. Maybe that's what they're planning on doing to me. But so I've got it, but I cannot file it. And I don't know any other greater assurance I can give you, although would remind you that the Planning and Zoning Commission put a restriction on their recommendation that a subdivision plat come back before them for approval. There is no way the current commission would ever approve a subdivision plat other than 17 single-family residential lots.
Okay.
So can I guarantee that? No, but I mean, those are the only two safety nets I can give you.
Okay. I think,
The other thing is,
appreciate
it doesn't get approved, we're gonna do something with the property, it'll be a commercial development, it will be. Clark's Pumpkin Shop is going in right next door to it, that property sold last week, it's gonna be a commercial development. I personally think this is a better alternative.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Okay.
Judge, may I speak?
Yes, sir.
My name's Mark Overstreet, and I live in Governor's Place, but I live at the far back of Governor's Place, and Slickaway Branch actually runs through my property. And I support fully everything the Staples say here, because I have to drive through that area every day, at least twice, going to and from work. But the point I would like to make is that, and what Mr. Jones said, I think makes sense. He can only do what he can do, and it would be an extreme breach of faith for his client to have him come here and represent one thing and then do something differently. But the traffic in and out of Governor's Place is at the point where somebody is going to get killed. We had a bad accident earlier this year where one of my neighbors wound up in the hospital in Louisville for weeks because of the way the traffic signal works out there. And so I would hope that in connection with the development of this area, somebody, I don't know whether it's Mr. Hewitt, whether it's the Planning and Zoning Commission, somebody looks long and hard at improving that entrance in and out of that subdivision. Because right now, it's not good, and it's only going to get worse as more and more people live out there and there's more and more commercial activity in that area.
Mr. Overstreet, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because because as you say that, there's a stoplight there.
Right.
So what is the issue?
There's two issues, if I might. The first issue, so you're coming from town wanting to turn left into
Okay.
Governor's Place.
Okay.
The first issue is the way the stoplight is synchronized, timed, or whatever it is. If you want to turn left, you have to sit through a complete cycle.
Is there no yellow caution?
There's a yellow caution, but you can't get a protected turn without sitting through a complete cycle.
I see.
Unlike the stoplight there at Copperleaf. That's, and I realize that's not your all's bailiwick, that's
Well,
the
but as
transportation.
you say this, Mr. Mitchell, hold on one second, because I think you're asking for something that we need to address, and that's why I'm asking you to define what the issue is. John, will you take this in and get this to the state as that we have heard about this as an issue?
Yeah, I'm listening.
Okay.
And,
there you go.
and then the second problem, and this probably no one can fix it, is when you're, again, on a Leestown Road heading out of town, you want to turn left into Governor's Place, there's a rise right there at that intersection. Unfortunately, or not unfortunately, but it's a matter of fact that there's a number of large industrial facilities down that road across from Governor's, from Isaac Shelby. There are, I won't say continuous, but there are regular semi-trailer trucks coming from Lexington, turning left in the other direction. When you're sitting here turning left into Governor's Place, those semi-trailer trucks completely block your view. And again, what happened at that wreck I mentioned, I think the neighbor, he took a chance.
Yeah.
And he was inching out
Yeah.
in front of that semi-trailer, and he got hit. And that, like I said, somebody's gonna get killed. So I appreciate your all's attention and your efforts to help. The other thing I wanted to mention, and Mr. Hewitt talked about this, because Slickaway Branch runs through my property, I have seen an incredible increase in the amount of runoff coming down. I've lost two, probably 50-year-old trees because they've been undermined by the increased runoff. And then in a 3-hour period about 4 years ago, I lost a 4-foot tall culvert and my entire driveway in that area because of the runoff. Now, the road department was great. They came out and fixed it. That's what makes me, as much as it hurts to say, glad to pay my county taxes. because that's the type of service. Because that's the type of service you get. But anything that you guys can do to help with that runoff issue would be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. And John, if you would follow up with the state on that turn. And I understand. I'm going to say this, Mark. Not that this is trying to cop out, but there are lots of those types of dangerous turns in all over. I was yesterday in a situation exactly that same way in another community, and I was lucky, I thought, because I could not see what I could see was all I could see, and I wasn't 100% sure that what I could see was all I needed to see. But I made the turn and I was lucky. So I know what you're talking about with your neighbor. I really do. And probably the only issue that you could really do with that would be to have a better timing on that full left turn light. And that's what we'll address with the state.
Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions on this? Any other questions? All right. Thank you all. Charlie, thank you. Thank you. Okay. Thank you too. Thank you all. All right. The next item on the agenda is authorization to approve a reappointment of Rebecca Quarles and Jan Wright to the Franklin County Extension District Board Agricultural and Natural Resources position, and they have been
fantastic members of this board. And I'm very, 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 very pleased with their work on this board. Thank you. And the next item is authorization to receive the treasurer's report. Miss Amy, you've been waiting a long time. Thank you, Amy.
So in your court packet, you have the revenue and expenses up through, I believe, Tuesday when we put these court packets together. I do have one correction on the last page of the expenses. Under the capital projects for the county road garage, there shows an encumbrance of $67,45.51, and that is incorrect. We did pay that. That was for the Liebman estate. And that's just a problem that we have with our software, and we're in the process of getting that corrected. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Okay. Questions? Questions?
I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Judge. And it is in the expense side, it's page 3 in the expense side. On the IT data processing, it's line item 015091-318, technical support. There's 53% basically of that entire line item that's encumbered.
Yeah, there was $22,000 for Microsoft Exchange. It's a 1-year license. So that's why that percentage is so high. It's sort of a pain up front.
You pay it one time when it's due, right?
Right.
That's for emails.
Tamara, do you know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Is it email?
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, Amy, let's go to payment of claims. Any questions on payment of claims? Squire Muller, you're first, and then Squire Sebastian.
So, a couple questions, Amy, on here, I guess page 1, it says there's some spray foam for a subdivision. I was just curious, do you have any idea what that was used for? I don't know, we did spray foaming.
Spray foam?
Which page are you on? What?
Page 1, that's road department, I guess.
Road funds.
Road funds.
So,
Maybe John Mitchell can answer that. John, are you on?
they do this.
Page 1 of the.
I can answer that.
All right, please do.
Yeah, we use that to seal around some concrete pipe joints sometimes. It's a whole lot easier and it works really well. It's just that expanding foam and it'll seal up and clog the water holes up.
Okay, perfect, thank you, John. All right, Amy, next one is on the jail funds. There's a Pride Enterprises for inmate eyeglasses. Wouldn't that be covered under the, what's it called?
Commissary.
Commissary, yes.
I asked this very same question last
I
time.
think he said he's got insurance to cover it, doesn't he?
I don't know, I just.
This is something the jailer budgets, when he makes his budget, and you will approve it for some of those inmate expenses. So it is a budget expense. Amy doesn't assign that GL code, but if this is something that you all do not want the jail paying for, when you're working on the budget, that's probably the time to address it, because it is built into the jailer's budget to pay for those items.
Okay.
And I thought I asked that question when we were working on the budget.
Well, it's.
About
budget was
specific.
approved, so.
Okay. That just makes us a little more vigilant.
And then Amy, if you could, on the last page, capital improvements, it says there's a Chase commercial loan, principal and interest on a $2.2 million loan. Could you refresh my memory what that's for, please?
That is for the, that's for the fire station. Yes, it's for the fire station bond.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's about, and that gonna be paid off?
We have a balance of $734,000.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's all, Judge.
Okay, Squire Sebastian?
Thank you, Judge. So, Madam Treasurer, can you talk to us about page 1, when they're under the occupational tax refunds? Can you talk to us a little bit about the process that someone or a group would have to go through, a business would have to go through? Do you know? Is there documentation they have to provide? They just send a letter and said, hey, I want XYZ refunded?
I'd have to ask Summer, is she on?
She probably is not. I can go see if she's available, if she's not at lunch, but typically what they do is they pay an estimated amount. Then once they know what the final amount is, then they will provide her with that documentation to show that they overpaid.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
then-
there has to be some kind of
yes, there is a-
supporting documentation. It
Absolutely
can't
there
just
is.
be
Right,
Hey,
that's
send me a check.
just like we do for any other check we cut.
And then, on, page 4, 019100513, the Forest Research Protect. What is that?
Can you tell me the account number again?
Sure. 019100513. So it is an 01 account.
Oh, that's a,
Forest Research Project.
yeah.
Yes, so who knows what that is?
That's a required statute to pay that. By state, they will send us the bill of the cost, and, which is broken out here for fire protection.
So it's a,
It's a state required expense. We don't have a choice.
okay, so what do they base that on? Do we know?
It's on the acreage right there. Where
Yeah, I
says
saw it
forest
says
acres at 2 cents.
Okay. And so they're assuming that, does that, like, is that an equivalent with, like agricultural land here? Agricultural land? Who would know that? Or is that, I mean, you know, I got trees in my yard. I don't think that it's a forest.
It's something we pay annually. I can contact
Do
the
you have any
state and
idea?
ask
I do
them.
not.
Okay. I'm just wondering how they determine it, if it's like a equivalent to like our agriculture zoning or,
Just understand what it is.
yeah, just to understand it.
I'll find the letter and send you all out a copy of it. It
Okay.
has the statute on it, so that'll give you more information on
Yeah,
what
that
they
would,
base it on. But that is something that you all will see annually.
okay, that would be great.
Squire Sebastian, Summer's here, so you have that, you want to ask her that question?
Yeah, so, thank you for coming in.
Oh, you're fine.
So, for the occupational tax refund here, we've got a couple of things. Are there specific items of documentation that they would have to share?
Most of those refunds, what they are is, especially this time of year, is corporations filing their actual return. In April, most of them will pay with an extension. They'll estimate what they're gonna owe when they file the final return. That's where those overpayments. Sometimes they want applied to next year, and sometimes they do require or ask for some of that to be refunded. That's the majority of the refunds. Sometimes we have payroll refunds where they amend their payroll returns, things like that, but I do require all the documentation and I go back through and check those.
Okay, I wasn't sure what type of documentation you have to provide in
Yeah.
order to get that.
Usually just a bunch of those.
So the
paperwork, so I can
actuals.
go back through kind of an audit what they've got.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So they pay the estimated earlier, they file the actual with the difference, they can choose to either get a refund or carry that
Right,
forward for
right.
next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you're
That
welcome.
helped. That helped very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Amy?
Well, in the recurring bills, there was one that we had in our other side of our packet. It was so under recurring bills, it says under ARPA, which is 845330-307, says there was a recurring bill for the Simon House, but as I understood it, that was a one-time award. So,
So those are pre-approved and reoccurring expenses. There are, when the standing order is approved by court, it lists the items that can be paid. That item was approved in a prior court meeting. However, we still wanted on the informational packet to show that the invoice had been paid. So if there's something that you all approved, say in today's court, that's not in the bill packet, but it's by resolution, or someone came in and requested something, you will then see it in the next informational packet at the next court, because we still want you to see that that transaction took place.
So I guess the main thing that I was just in a quandary about was, it was in a packet that said recurring bills. So I was I just wanted to be sure that that 50,000 is not something that's gonna be recurring, because it's in a packet
Correct.
entitled recurring bills. So we've all heard that, right?
Yeah.
It's not, okay,
All right,
thank you.
any other
Thank you very
questions? Amy, thank you. Okay, other business? Squire Muller.
Thank you, Judge. I gave Andrew a couple pictures if he could put up. We've been working kind of with the school board on the mountain bike track up there at Lakeview, and right on the kind of the board there, and just kind of want to bring the court up to speed where we are on that. These aren't in any particular order or fashion or anything. I think everybody remembers talking about it. It's actually on the school property, and we kind of went into agreement with them and the Mountain Bike Association. It's kind of in a curriculum now with the high schools, and I know Franklin County has a team. They just got done competing. So we've been up there for the last year kind of working on clearing mostly invasives out and building a kind of a mountain bike pump track so for the kids to use. So I just wanted to kind of share that with everybody.
Squire Muller, tell me, you said we, who is we? This is not the fiscal court.
Okay, well, I thought we had talked about it, so I guess it's just me as a citizen then, you know.
I want to make it clear.
Okay,
I don't think the fiscal court voted.
Okay, no, yeah, so I guess it was with the Mountain Bike Association and the school board, but
Okay.
it's kind of working
That's
working
pretty- it's
working
cool, I'm
together.
not saying-
Yeah, no, and I might have misspoke there. Squire, well, I guess not Squire, but JW, as a tech teacher, helped with some ramps and things like that. I think they're gonna be coming up here. So it's just another avenue to get the kids kind of out in the environment and do healthy things. So the team will be coming out there and doing some more work on it, but just kind of a cool over. That's kind of the track layout right there. It's just kind of just something else to add to our community.
Are kids using it then quite a bit?
Yeah, they're just starting to, because they've been pretty inundated with, yeah, I think there's a picture right there. Yeah, so there's some of the ramps that JW's class made.
You all made those, JW?
Yeah. Yeah, so, and there's some other stuff.
A jump, a lander, and then a bridge as
Yeah.
well, three-part bridge.
Yeah, I think they're planning on coming out there this weekend maybe and actually shooting some good GoPro footage and camera stuff, so I'm gonna talk to the school board, I think on the 14th, and just, you know, just something else to add to the community. It's kind of exciting,
Is
so.
that school board property?
It actually is in the back there, kind of butts up to where like the YMCA soccer fields are in Lakeview. It's kind of right on the
Oh.
border there, so yeah.
Okay.
So just something to do, you know, so yeah, just want to share that with everybody.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anybody else? I want to say that we signed, the paperwork was signed the other day for Dunkers, and so it is official. We have gotten the keys yesterday, and it has been the intention to have a public meeting out there to let the public see the site and tour it. I'm not officially announcing, but unofficially going to shoot for 2 weeks from Sunday, not next Sunday, but the following Sunday from 3 to 5. If we can get out there and get it semi-cleaned up and opened up for the public, I will make that official announcement as soon as I can. But I haven't been able to speak with Jeremy and to get out there, but so a couple of weekends from now, on Sunday afternoon, inviting the public out to see it, and we'll do our best to have golf carts out there if the weather permitting, but at least come out and talk and see the area.
Okay.
Tentatively the week before Thanksgiving?
The Sunday before
The
Thanksgiving,
20th.
yes.
Sounds like.
Yeah. Okay. But I'll, Squire Moore?
So, now that we have this, what are we gonna call it? We have an official name that we're
we'll leave that to the next court.
And public input.
And public input, right.
What are we calling it now, Duckers?
Yeah, because that, officially, that's what it is, Duckers. We bought it as Duckers LLC or something like that, so, yeah.
But this is the court that purchased it, so I don't know about leaving it.
Okay, well, before anything is done, I think public input is number one priority. So that's where I'm trying my best to get that done as soon as possible out there, okay? I'll let everybody know.
I want to tell the court a little bit about the KSU excellent thing that we kind of talked about briefly.
Hold on one second. Ms. Stapleton, we are going to go to voting session in just a few minutes.
I'm going to watch.
You okay? All right. Okay.
Pardon me?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Squire Muller brought up the Exum Center. There is a committee that is formed made up of KSU, the city and the county, and some others that is meeting to discuss the potential of the Exum Center on KSU's campus. Number one, as an indoor swimming aquatic center, as well as a possibility, and one of those entities that we're meeting with is YMCA, as a possibility of the Exum Center being a potential YMCA type of or facility. So I think it's all out in the public, and we're excited about that. And there's a meeting next week, and there'll be continual meetings of trying to move that forward. So that's just an FYI. There's no specifics on it other than those generalities.
Conversations are being had.
Conversations, yes.
Just to echo, I had a conversation with a member from the YMCA, and he was telling me that the conversations were going great, and that there potentially could be an MOA or some sort of agreement coming very soon.
Well, that's ultimately the goal.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, the governor has been involved, and he has let it be known that he'd like to see something in writing before the end of the year.
That's right. Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Okay?
For the court, we are circulating a proposed MOA to bring back to the court, the next court session, et cetera, if approved. But you've got 5 different government agencies, et cetera, that are circulating it right now. So we're circulating it and generating it, and everybody's excited about what's getting put into it.
Okay. The next thing, there will be a park committee meeting immediately after the closed session, which is the end of our voting meeting in just a few moments. And I am bringing pizza, so pizza's gonna be
For the park committee.
For the park committee, yeah. Okay. Squire Muller.
I didn't know if Squire Sebastian and Squire Tracy wanted to kind of recap. We had movie night, so I think that's an important thing to talk about.
So we had a tremendous turnout from car enthusiasts with Kentucky Backroads Cruising. They actually parked down in the horse arena and took most of the horse arena to set up to trunk or treat out of. So folks outside of that group also came down and handed candy out. Sheriff Choir had Hoagie's ice cream on site, and there were free scoops of ice cream given out to everybody there, so that was a huge hit. We had the fire department brought a ladder truck, and there were so many kids who actually got to go inside the ladder truck and climb around on the truck, so it was a very exciting time for them too. Mounted police was there, so it was fantastic. The movie that we showed was Beetlejuice, and we have to thank Traditional Bank for giving us funds for that. So, you know, it was a fantastic evening. We had our constable, Mr. Sandifer, out helping with traffic, and he was on site as well. So there was a lot of opportunity for community policing and individuals to come in contact with our first responders and kind of make a good positive connection there. It was great. We had several firemen on site, and they were really thrilled to kind of hang out and play with the kids and show them through the fire apparatus. And then again, you know, we had members of the sheriff's staff out there, we had a constable out, we had mounted police on site, kids wanting to pet the horse and get close to them. So it was a great evening, and the weather cooperated perfectly. It was warm, and just want to thank the park staff for making Lakeview Park look great. They put up banners across the community, so they went out and took those down afterwards. So just kudos to everybody who was involved in making that happen as a free event, free family-oriented event.
Okay, good, and thank you for putting that
It was
together.
good.
Sherry,
It
you
was
were
good.
very instrumental in getting that put together.
It was
I
good,
mean,
thank you.
is there anything else? Seeing none, we've got a 5-minute recess, and then we'll go into voting session at 11:25. Okay, 5-minute recess.
was. Hey, Lambert, okay. Everybody's here. Welcome, everybody. This is the Franklin County Fiscal Court vote session for November 4th, 2022. And clerk, call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Here.
Squire Blackburn.
Present.
Squire Muller.
Present.
Squire Tracy.
Here.
Squire Booth.
Present.
Squire Moore.
Here.
Judge Wells.
Here. All right, the first item on the agenda is authorization for approval of minutes from our regular meeting of October 13th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
All right, any discussion? Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization for approval of minutes from our special meeting of October the 27th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. Next item is authorization for approval of the county clerk's claim for preparing the tax bills.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is authorization for approval of the sheriff's official receipt for property tax bills for 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is authorization to hire Richard Sandifer as a temporary part-time animal control officer while we have a particular officer that's going to be off for extended leave.
So moved.
Second.
All right. Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
I know Constable Sanford is busy, but the experience he has, I think we're lucky to have him. Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, and it's Constable Sanford is busy. This is a part-time, and the sheriff's office will also be covering in addition to this, so that we're not going to drop coverage, but we will continue to have some coverage since somebody is going to be out for an extended period. So I vote yes on that. The next item is authorization to approve fiscal court order bond for a constable.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, the next item is the first reading of an ordinance amending Chapter 33, Taxation, of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances by adding a definition section and amending Section 33.01, Tax Imposed. This item will be voted on at our next meeting, which will be November the 22nd. The next item on the agenda is a second reading and approval of an ordinance amending the table of special ordinances, Section 1, zoning map changes of the Franklin County Code of Ordinances for a 4.09 acre property, being all of Lot 1, Parcel 2, as shown in Plat Cabinet M, Slide 131, further identified as PVA map number 086-30-11-001.00, located at the intersection of Isaac Shelby Circle West and Metcalf Drive from Limited Commercial District CL to 2 Dwelling District RD.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
I'm going to vote yes on this, and I know we've heard quite a bit in regard to single-family detached dwellings today and in previous conversations, so with assurances in that regard, a yes.
Squire Blackburn.
This comes up, like several have in the last 3 or 4 years, where we see the future land use map and the goals and policies of the plan, comprehensive plan, not always aligning with one another. I think this particular application for this zone change meets the goals and policies and the land use map misses the mark. There were some very big concerns by the residents, and I think assurances have been made with them. Although not concrete, they have the opportunity to address them in the development stage with the Planning Commission. And I believe the Planning Commission will make the right decision on this. I'm a yes.
Square Muller.
I appreciate the conversations that were had on this between the court members, the applicant, and the citizens. So I think it was a good exercise to work things out together. So I'm a yes.
Square Tracy.
Lowering the zone lowering the zone from CL to RD to make less intrusive is the right thing to do. In this particular case, a well-established neighborhood is going to grow and welcome new families to their neighborhood and not a strip center. I vote yes.
Square Booth.
I understand from a legal representation for the developer and the owner that it cannot, the assurance to the residents of Governor's Place that the land will be prohibited from anything except single-family detached homes, is not able to move forward until we approve the zone change. So I am a yes.
Square Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item is authorization to approve a resolution requesting the Franklin County Planning Commission conducting hearing to amend the Franklin County Code of Ordinances to remove the rural residential B, RD zoning district from section 155.085 and amend the definition of residential recovery relating to the residential recovery facilities.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Square Sebastian.
So there's been considerable discussion regarding residential recovery centers and uses such as proximity, density, infrastructure, character change of the neighborhoods, etc. This begins to address those discussions. So with that, I'll be a yes.
Square Blackburn.
I know for a fact we have people suffering from addiction in every zoning designation in Franklin County. I hate to cross out any place that's going to offer them to have treatment, but I do understand the concerns of the citizens. I vote yes.
Square Muller.
Yes.
Square Tracy.
Yes.
Square Booth.
Yes.
Square Moore.
I didn't want this one from the get-go, and I'm definitely a yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes. The next item has been tabled is the authorization to approve a resolution accepting Whispering Pines Drive and White Pine Court into the county road system. There's going to be some additional
Information.
oversight of the area, and hopefully it'll be brought back to us at our next court meeting. The next item on the agenda is authorization to approve a reappointment of Rebecca Quarles to the Franklin County Extension District Board, Agricultural and Natural Resource position for a term ending December 31st, 2025.
So, second,
Call the roll.
Square Sebastian.
yes.
Square Blackburn.
Yes.
Square Muller.
Yes.
Square Tracy.
Yes.
Square Booth.
I admire Rebecca Quarles and I am a yes.
Square Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, and I appreciate her good work on the board. The next item is authorization to approve a reappointment of Jan Wright to the Franklin County Extension District Board, Agricultural and Natural Resource position for a term ending December 31st, 2025.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Square Sebastian.
Yes.
Square Blackburn.
Yes.
Square Muller.
Yes.
Square Tracy.
Yes.
Square Booth.
Yes.
Square Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Jan has been a fantastic member. She's been on for a
couple terms, and she's the secretary, I think, and she is really, really good. And so we appreciate her good work, and without question, yes. The next item is authorization to receive the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes, next item is payment of claims. Is there a motion to deny any payment of any claims? Seeing none, let the record reflect that claims are ordered to be paid. The next item is authorization to go into closed session per KRS 61.1, Section 1, Section D, deliberations on the future acquisition or sale of real property by a public agency when publicity would be likely to affect the value of the property. There will not be any action taken during this closed session.
So moved.
Call the roll.
Squire Sebastian.
Yes.
Squire Blackburn.
Yes.
Squire Muller.
Yes.
Squire Tracy.
Yes.
Squire Booth.
Yes.
Squire Moore.
Yes.
Judge Wells.
Yes.
Go ahead and mention both.
Okay, then, well, after, he will